Arab millionaire takes his daughter out to lunch and then sees a single black mother doing something that completely paralyzes him. "Daddy, why is that boy eating alone?" The voice of Yasmin, 8, broke the silence at Bellissimo restaurant. Tariq Al-Farsi, 42, an Arab billionaire and CEO of one of the largest international hotel chains, followed his daughter's gaze. In the most discreet corner of the main hall, a 36-year-old black woman carefully cut a piece of roast chicken into tiny cubes while a 9-year-old boy with unkempt curly hair frantically moved his hands on the table without touching the food. "He's not alone, honey. His mother is there." Tariq adjusted the white keffiyeh he wore over his $3,000 Armani suit, uncomfortable with his daughter's curiosity. "But she's not talking to him. Just cutting. Yasmin frowned, genuinely confused. This was strange to her. Her father always looked her in the eye during meals, always asked about her day, was always present. But something about that woman caught Tariq's attention too. The almost surgical precision of her movements. The infinite patience. The way she waited for the boy to arrange the pieces in perfect rows before finally bringing one to his mouth. "He needs it to be this way," the woman muttered to herself, but loud enough for Tariq to hear from the next table. 15 pieces. Always 15. If it's 14, he won't eat. Tariq felt something tighten in his chest. He recognized that ritual. He recognized that controlled exhaustion on her face. Grace Mitchell had just spent $47 on a meal she couldn't afford. But it was her son Jordan's 9th birthday, and he had asked for only one thing: "I want to eat at the restaurant with the chandelier, Mom. The one with lights that look like stars." Jordan was autistic, level 2 support. Limited verbal communication, rigid routines, extreme sensory sensitivity. Grace's life revolved around keeping Jordan's world predictable and safe. She worked as a nurse in a public hospital, 12-hour night shifts, earning $3,200 a month. Rent consumed $1,600. Therapy for Jordan, even with insurance, another $800. There was little left over. Almost nothing. But today, for the shy smile Jordan gave when he saw the crystal chandelier, it was worth every penny she didn't have. "Can I go talk to them?" Yasmin was already unbuckling her seatbelt when Tariq grabbed her by the arm. "No. They want privacy." "But Dad, the boy looks lonely even though he's with his mother." The phrase echoed in Tariq's head like a punch. Yasmin was 8 years old, but sometimes she spoke truths that adults spent their entire lives avoiding. Tariq knew that loneliness. He knew it intimately. Exactly 7 years ago, when Yasmin was only a year old, his wife Nadia had died in a car accident. He had raised his daughter alone ever since, refusing help from nannies, his own family, anyone. Presence was everything. He had learned that the hard way. But that boy, there was something different about that loneliness. That's when it happened. Jordan, without warning, stood up abruptly and walked straight to Tariq's table. Grace froze, plate and fork in midair. "Jordan, no." But it was too late. The boy stopped next to Yasmin, his eyes fixed on the pearl necklace she was wearing. He didn't look at her face. Just the necklace. Counting the pearls silently, his lips moving. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grace came running over, her face red with embarrassment and panic. "I'm sorry, sir, he didn't mean to bother you. Sometimes he likes to count things. I'll take him back." 27. Tariq's voice was calm but firm. Grace stopped. "What?" "The necklace has 27 pearls." Tariq looked at Jordan for the first time. Really looked. "You were counting right, champ." Jordan didn't answer. But his shoulders relaxed. He stopped swaying. And then, for the first time in Grace's life, her son smiled at a stranger. Yasmin, with the uncanny intuition of children who grow up too fast, reached out and touched Jordan's arm. "Would you like to sit with us? My dad ordered dessert. There's chocolate cake with strawberries. 15 strawberries." Grace felt tears sting her eyes. That girl had said 15 on purpose. She had heard everything. Tariq stood up and pulled out a chair. "Please. Join us." It wasn't a request. It was a necessity. Grace glanced at the waiter, who was watching them with barely concealed disapproval. She glanced at the other customers in the restaurant, white, wealthy faces already whispering. She glanced at her son, who for the first time in months looked calm. Only if you let me pay my share. Pride was all she had left. Tarek smiled. A sad smile. You've already paid more than I ever will. No one at the table understood what he meant. But as Jordan sat down next to Yasmin, arranging the cutlery in order of size, Grace saw something in Tarek's face that she recognized immediately. The same exhaustion she saw in the mirror every day. The same fierce determination to be enough for a child who deserved the whole world. Two strangers. Two single parents. Two completely opposite worlds. But at that moment, at a table in a restaurant too expensive for her and too simple for him, something impossible began. The restaurant manager approached, a forced smile on his face. "Mr. Al-Farsi, is there a problem? We can move you and the young man to a more suitable table." Tarek didn't take his eyes off Grace. "The problem, Roberto, is that you're suggesting separating my son and my daughter. Now, bring the dessert." 4-4. If you want to know why an Arab billionaire called an unknown child his son in front of an entire restaurant, why an exhausted nurse agreed to sit at the table of a man who could buy the hospital where she worked, and why this impossible encounter was about to turn everyone's lives upside down, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the strongest bonds aren't the ones we inherit. They're the ones we choose to build with the right people, at the right time, for the right reasons. Dessert arrived in 15 minutes. Chocolate cake with exactly 15 strawberries, just as Yasmin had promised. Jordan counted them 3 times before eating the first one. Grace watched her son with hawk-like attention, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of sensory overload. But something extraordinary was happening. Jordan was calm. Yasmin talked to him without expecting answers, just telling stories about school, about the Persian cat in the apartment, about how her father knew how to do origami from memory. Jordan didn't look at her. But he listened. Grace could see it in his relaxed shoulders, in his hands that weren't shaking. Tarek studied Grace discreetly. He noticed her nails, cut short like someone who washes their hands 100 times a shift. The $20 Casio watch. The navy blue dress, well pressed but visibly old. The large faux leather bag where he glimpsed a tablet with superhero stickers, 3 different types of snacks in individual packages, noise-canceling headphones. A mother prepared for any crisis. "You're a nurse." It wasn't a question. Grace looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" "I recognize the signs. My wife was a doctor." Was. Past tense. Grace caught it immediately. "I'm sorry." It was 7 years ago. Car accident. Yasmin was 1 year old. Tarek took a sip of the Arabic coffee he had specially ordered. "I learned how to style women's hair by watching tutorials on YouTube at 3 in the morning." Grace felt something break inside her. An Arab billionaire publicly admitting that he learned to be a mother and father by watching videos on the internet. "I learned to do ABA therapy at home by watching the same videos." She confessed. Health insurance only covers 10 hours a month. Jordan needs 40. Tarek was silent. 40 hours of ABA therapy cost approximately $4,800 per month. Grace earned $3,200. The math didn't add up. It never did. "How do you manage?" "I don't." The answer came out raw, honest. "I work extra shifts. I sell cakes on the weekends. My sister helps when she can, but she has 3 kids. Grace stopped, realizing she was venting to a complete stranger. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "I do." Tarek looked at Jordan, who was now arranging the 15 strawberries into geometric patterns on the plate. "Because I recognize that look. That absolute determination to be enough. I had that look for 7 years." He took a deep breath. "But I learned something crucial. Being enough doesn't mean doing everything yourself." That's when Grace's cell phone rang. Hospital. Emergency. They needed her to cover the night shift. It started in 3 hours. Grace closed her eyes. It was Jordan's birthday. She had promised that today would be just for them. "I have to go," she murmured, already calculating how much time she had to take Jordan home, prepare dinner, and convince her elderly neighbor to stay with him. "How much do they pay for an extra shift?" Tarek asked. Grace frowned. "Excuse me." "How much?" $250. "Why?" Tarek took out his wallet. Grace raised her hand immediately. No. Absolutely not. I'm not offering charity. Tarek placed $500 bills on the table. I'm offering a job. Yasmin needs someone who knows first aid to accompany her on a trip I'm taking next week. 3 days. $500 a day. You get Jordan, he gets Yasmin. Everyone wins. It was a lie. He had no trip planned. But Grace didn't need to know that. Grace looked at the money. $1,500. 3 months of Jordan's therapy. But something was wrong. Why are you doing this? Tarek met her eyes. Because 7 years ago, when Yasmin had a fever of 104 at 2 in the morning and I didn't know what to do, a black nurse named Patricia stayed an extra hour on duty to teach me how to bring her fever down. She didn't charge me. She didn't judge me for being a rich father who didn't know how to take care of his own daughter. She just helped. He pushed the money toward her. I'm paying it forward. Grace took the money with trembling hands. But before she could thank him, the manager Roberto returned, this time accompanied by a 50-year-old woman with impeccable blonde hair and a Chanel dress. Tarek, dear. Her voice echoed through the restaurant. Isabella Whitmore, widow of an oil tycoon, known for her charity parties and her social venom. What a surprise to see you here. And with such diverse company. The tone made it clear what she was thinking. Yasmin, with the brutal honesty of a child, spoke up. Mrs. Isabella, you're mean. My dad said that mean people are those who judge others by their clothes. Isabella turned pale. Grace wanted to disappear. But Jordan, who never spoke to strangers, who never defended anyone because he barely understood social concepts, did something impossible. He stood up. He walked over to Isabella. And he threw the 15 strawberries from his plate into her $20,000 Hermes bag. The restaurant froze. The silence that followed was absolute. Isabella looked at the Hermes bag dripping red strawberry juice, then at Jordan, then at Grace with fury in her eyes. Your son destroyed my bag. That bag is worth more than the car you probably drive. Grace was already on her feet, her face burning with humiliation, trying to pull Jordan back. I'm so sorry, I'll pay. You'll pay. Isabella laughed, a cruel sound. With what money? With your nurse's salary that barely covers your rent. Tarek rose slowly, and something in his body language made the entire restaurant even quieter. Isabella, I strongly suggest you stop talking. Or what? Are you going to defend me from this? Finish that sentence. Tarek's voice dropped several degrees. I beg you to finish it. Isabella backed down, but the poison had already been released. Everyone here knows what I think. You bringing this woman and this problematic child to a place like this is an insult. That's when Yasmin did something no one expected. She took her own necklace of 27 pearls, a gift from her late grandmother, and placed it around Jordan's neck. Jordan is not problematic. He's my brother now. And if you insult my family again, I'll throw strawberries in your purse every day. Roberto, the manager, tried to intervene. Mr. Al-Farsi, perhaps it would be better. Tarek cut him off with a glance. Roberto, do you know who owns this restaurant? Roberto blinked, confused. The Bellini family, sir. Wrong. Tarek took out his cell phone. I bought this place last month. And you're fired. Not for incompetence, but for passive cruelty. I've seen you judging Grace and Jordan since they arrived. The color drained from Roberto's face. Grace covered her mouth with her hand. Tarek turned to Isabella. Jordan didn't destroy your bag out of malice. He saw you hurting people he cares about, so he offered the only solution he knows. Food. Comfort. Kindness. Isabella tried to laugh. Are you going to ruin your reputation for this woman? Let them talk. Tarek took Grace's hand. Because unlike you, I know what it's like to raise a child alone without an instruction manual. That's when Grace pulled her hand away from his. Stop. Everyone looked at her. I don't need you to fight my battles. I don't need a billionaire hero saving a poor nurse. I'm not a charity project. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. Thanks for dinner. But I won't take your money. And I definitely won't take your pity. Grace started to leave, but Jordan planted his feet firmly on the ground. He looked Tarek in the eye for the first time and spoke 3 words. The first he had spoken to a stranger in 2 years. "Don't leave." Grace froze. Jordan never asked to stay close to strangers. Tarek knelt down to Jordan's height. "I'm not offering pity for your mother, champ. I'm offering partnership. Because alone, I pretend I'm fine when I'm not." He looked at Grace. "Your mother taught me today that strength isn't doing everything yourself. It's knowing when to accept help." Grace felt her defenses crumble. "I don't know how to accept help." "Neither do I." Tarek smiled sadly. "How about we learn together?" Isabella tried one last card. "Your board of directors will love to know you're making emotional decisions." Tarek turned to her with an icy stare. "Isabella, I have footage of you trying to bribe waiters to drug a business rival last week. Get out of my restaurant. You are banned from entering any establishment I own. That's 47 restaurants, 23 hotels, 15 cafes in 8 countries." Isabella ran out. Tarek looked at Grace. "Tomorrow, you take over as inclusive hospitality manager of this restaurant. Salary, $8,000 a month. Flexible hours for Jordan." Grace tried to protest, but he continued. "This isn't charity. It's business. You've spent years creating safe environments for Jordan. Imagine how many families with neurodivergent children avoid restaurants for fear of judgment. You're going to transform my 47 restaurants into places where all children are welcome." Grace looked at Jordan, smiling with Yasmin's necklace. She looked at Tarek, who offered no pity. He offered purpose. And for the first time in 9 years, Grace Mitchell allowed herself to believe that she didn't have to carry the world alone. 6 months later, Bellissimo was no longer the same restaurant. Grace had transformed not only that space, but Tarek's entire chain. Menus with pictures for nonverbal children. Adjustable lighting for sensory sensitivity. A quiet zone for moments of overload. Staff training on neurodiversity. Families who had spent years avoiding restaurants now booked tables weeks in advance. Jordan dined there 3 times a week. Yasmin always accompanied him, teaching him to try new flavors. 16 strawberries this time. Then 17. Progress came in numbers, and she had learned his language. Grace was in the office reviewing a project when Tarek walked in without knocking. 7 months of working together had created a strange intimacy. They knew each other at their worst. At 2 a.m. when Jordan had seizures. On Sundays when Yasmin cried for the mother she never knew and Grace held the girl until she fell asleep. "We need to talk." He closed the door. In recent months, something had changed between them. Glances that lasted 2 seconds longer. Conversations that started about work and ended at 11 p.m. about dreams, fears, scars. She had fallen in love. And that was dangerous. "If it's about the Boston budget, Grace." He sat on the edge of the desk. "My family in Dubai is pressuring me to remarry. They say Yasmin needs a mother." Grace forced a smile. "And are you going to?" "No. Because Yasmin already has a mother. She's been calling you Mama Grace for 3 months. Jordan calls me Baba Tarek. Our children have already decided who we are." Grace felt tears burning. "Tarek, I know all the reasons you're going to say no. Different worlds. Different cultures. My fortune versus your difficult past. But Grace," he pressed his forehead against hers. "None of that matters to our children. And it shouldn't matter to us." Grace closed her eyes. "I'm afraid. Afraid this is a fantasy. That the world is too cruel." "Then let's be afraid together." Tarek kissed her forehead. "Because I didn't find you in that restaurant by chance. Alone, we were just surviving. Together, we are living." That night, Tarek brought both families together. His brothers from Dubai arrived by private jet. Grace's sister came by bus with her 3 children. 2 worlds collided. But it was the children who broke the ice. Jordan showed off his collection of 247 stones organized by color. Yasmin taught basic Arabic to Grace's nephews using songs from TikTok. 9 months after that impossible dinner, they were married in a simple ceremony at the registry office. Jordan was the page boy, arranging the rings in order of sparkle. Yasmin was the flower girl, scattering petals in groups of 7. When the judge asked if they accepted, Jordan spoke before anyone else. "I do." Everyone laughed. But he was right. They all accepted. A year after the wedding, Grace gave birth to Nadia Grace. Jordan, now 10 years old, held his little sister with mathematical precision, counting her 10 little fingers 3 times before declaring, "She's complete." Yasmin cried with joy, whispering to the baby, "You are named after my mother in heaven and my mother on earth." Isabella Whitmore, the woman who had humiliated them, lost everything. An investigation revealed fraud, bribery, extortion. She fell publicly. But Tarek felt no satisfaction. Only pity. He had learned that revenge does not warm an empty bed. Love does. On their second wedding anniversary, Grace found Tarek at 3 a.m. looking at a framed photo. Nadia, his first wife. "Sometimes I feel guilty. For being so happy again. For loving you so much." Grace sat down next to him. "Tarek, the heart has no limits. You didn't replace Nadia. You honored her memory by living life to the fullest. She would have wanted that." Tarek hugged her. "You know what scares me the most? That I almost let it slip away. That pride, fear, and differences almost cost me this life." Grace kissed the top of his head. "But it didn't. Because when it mattered, you chose love over fear. You chose to see a child counting pearls and recognize that perfection comes in different forms." 3 years after that night at Bellissimo, Jordan entered an inclusion program at a regular school. At age 12, he talked to classmates about dinosaurs and prime numbers. Yasmin, age 11, was his biggest advocate. Baby Nadia was 2.5, spoke complete sentences in English and Arabic, and organized blocks by color, inheriting Jordan's love of patterns. Tarek's network of inclusive restaurants expanded to 12 countries. Grace lectured internationally on neurodivergent hospitality. They were no longer an Arab billionaire and a black nurse. They were just family. And on that table where it all began, there was now a bronze plaque, Al Farsi Mitchell Family Table. Reserved for families who need a safe space. Because everyone deserves to sit where there are lights that look like stars. If this story reminded you that love knows no boundaries, that family is who we choose, that different is not wrong but unique, and that sometimes the best things in life happen when 2 brave strangers choose to sit at the same table, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us, have you ever had the courage to build a bridge where others see an abyss? Because in the end, it's not money, power, or perfection that fills life. It's having someone to share strawberries with. It's having someone to hold your hand when the world seems too heavy. It's choosing every day to love loudly enough for your children to hear. And that's priceless.